Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Athlete Podcast sponsored by Sports for Champions. Today I'm delighted to be joined by 4 times world record holder and ultra endurance athlete Sean Conway. How are you today, Sean?
I'm very good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Oh, more than welcome. It's great to have you here. The first ultra endurance athlete that we've had on our roster and the first one we've got the chance to interview, so thank you very much for joining us.
Brilliant, anytime.
Can you tell us a little bit about your early life? Were you always sporty?
Not at all, mate. No, I did sport at school because I had to, like most kids, you got to do sport. And then from 18, 19 through till 30, did nothing.
Wow.
I genuinely didn't even own a pair of running shoes. I did cycle lands into John O'Groats in my when I was nearing 30, but super slowly. Didn't really. I was doing 50 mile a day or something, and that was a big day. So nothing with an athletic sort of achievement to it. So yeah, I only really started sport when I was 30.
What was school like?
School was awesome. Yeah, I was schooled in South Africa, so which is, sport is religion in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly rugby, cricket, which I wasn't very good at, either of those. I got into canoeing a little bit at school, K1 and K2, so that's sort of long, thin canoes, like you see in the Olympics that they do sprinting on, but we would go down rivers and then so I had a slightly different rudder system at the back. But yeah, I got pretty good at that. Well, I did races basically, and 3-day long marathon races, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, I wasn't good. I was okay, but I wasn't the worst. But I was nowhere near the best in the world. And then you just gave it up. Once I left school, that was it. I moved to an area where they just didn't have rivers and they didn't have a canoeing club, I guess, as it were. And that was it, really. That was my sporting sort of ambition gone, really, until I was 30.
Wow. What was the change at 30?
So I was a photographer, and I remember dreaming as a kid of being some sort of like travel photographer, like traveling the world, using my camera as a passport to work for National Geographic and things like that. And I had some good gigs in the early days. I worked, I went to Morocco, India, Canada for various photo shoots for brands, doing catalogue shoots for the yearly range of kit. I worked on the Harry Potter films as a stills photographer, which was awesome, with Murray Close, one of the main Warner Brothers photographers. Photographed Prince William, Johnny Wilkinson. It was fun in the early days, but then I slowly just started taking on jobs that paid better but weren't as creative. And that, for me, was in the form of school portrait photography. Remember your school photo day? You sit there and your parents buy them. I don't even know if that happens anymore, because parents just...
I think so.
Yeah. My kids haven't. I'd buy them, though, if they came through the door, even though they were rubbish. And, and it paid well. And then when I turned 30, I suddenly realised, wow, it just sort of... one year led on to another. And I suddenly realised, well, I'm not travelling the world. Why don't I try? I want to go travelling. So I sold my business for £1. Then thought, let's go travelling, but I just wanted to push myself, and also I didn't really have any money. So I thought, right, if there's a world record I can break in the world of travel that involves some sort of travelling to it, maybe I'll get sponsorship, and it'll be a proper endeavour rather than just me whimsically, going around the world slowly. So yeah, entered the global bike race, it was called.
How did you go around choosing that? Did you literally get a Guinness World Book of Records book and start looking through and finding gaps?
Yeah, at the time I'd heard about a guy called Mark Beaumont who had the round the world cycle record, and it was sort of quite achievable. A few people had broken it since him, but I thought, wow, a lap of the planet. I mean, that's going to tick all the travel boxes for me.
Of course.
And then I just randomly came across a guy called Vin Cox who had the record, and he was putting on this idea that if anyone else wants to get the round the world record, why don't you all start at the same time at the same place in Greenwich? And I was like, right, well, if I enter that race, then I'm part of something official. Then maybe I'll get a proper sponsor, because there was a couple of riders who had already entered and they seemed to have sponsors and things like that. And all I really needed was someone to pay for flights between continents, because you've got to fly once you get to oceans or whatever, and some food money, really. And so I entered that, and then worked really hard trying to get some funding, and managed to get the funding, and that was it, really. Back in 2011, I did all the funding, and then the race was 2012, early 2012.
What did the training for the race look like?
A lot. I loved it. 40 hours a week.
Yeah, so I was going to say, because you're going from sort of no
nothing,
basically nothing, yeah.
So my first, I remember it was about May. Well, I remember it was the day Prince William got married. Whatever the day that was, I tried to cycle London to Brighton, which is 60 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Bearing in mind, during the round the world, I'd need to do 170 miles a day. I got to Crawley-ish, got puncture, didn't know how to fix it. Couldn't fix it. And jumped on the train, went home. Couldn't even do it. So yeah, I had a lot of work to do. So I was very naive and ignorant, but you know, I was determined, I guess. And I trained hard, 40 hours a week. A lot of that was on Saturdays. So every Saturday I would do like a 200-mile day, which takes 20 hours at least, you know, with stops. And then the rest of the day was just bike and gym, you know, probably 3 gym sessions a week, 5 bike sessions a week, ranging from an hour to 20 hours. So just putting in the hours and the legs, you know.
I'm interested to know how that changed you as a person, from going from sort of relative inactivity to obviously training as a professional athlete.
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, as a photographer, you're not super inactive. You know, like I'm up every day. I'm going to different schools. I'm carrying camera bags up and down stairs, back and forth. You're on your feet the whole time, so you're sort of active. But yeah, you're right. There was no level of athleticism in what I was doing. You know, I just didn't think about it. It would have overwhelmed me, and then what's the point of thinking about it? So I just sort of said, right, well, I'm here. I need to get to this level. What are the steps? And that's the cool thing with sport. You can get to 90% pretty easy, maybe even 95% pretty easy. It's that last 5% where you become world champion, right? Or get gold medal, or get a world record. So, yeah, I knew I needed to get to 95%, which I could just do with volume training and not get injured, and you know, the right type of volume and all that. And I had a guy helping me out, Steve. And then the last bit was then, you know, working out what I was doing wrong and how could I improve a little bit. But the cool thing about the ultra endurance thing is, you know, the longer the distance, the less importance there is on your physical fitness, because there's so many other elements involved. You know, like when Usain Bolt wants to run 100 meters, it's almost entirely his biological and muscle fitness and speed and, you know, his start and technique. Like, it's all physical if he wants to break the record. But when you're cycling around the world, which takes 6 months, you know, the fitness side maybe is only half of it, because there's a whole lot of other stuff, like a bit of luck, bit of conditions, food, route planning, you know, there's a whole other element of things. So 2 people head to head on a round the world bike race, the fittest person won't necessarily win.
Yeah,
definitely not. You know, and the strongest person won't win either. So, for example, you know, there's quite a few women who've beaten all the men in some of these ultra races. Like Lael Wilcox won the Across America self-supported bike race. Sarah Hammond has won Race to the Rock, I think 2 or 3 times, beating all the men. Because, you know, yes, if she went into the lab and did an FTP test and a VO2 max test, she would be lower biologically, because that she probably would be lower than a man in that race. But actually, it doesn't matter. You don't need a massive FTP. You don't need a massive VO2 max. So it's just all about being more resilient, and that's what, you know, they were just more resilient. Just did a better race, played a better game. So yeah, I did train a lot, and but also I sort of ticked all the other boxes that you need to tick in order to get these sort of long ultra endurance records.
That resilience, is that something that you look to train? Obviously the training itself will build up resilience. If you're doing 200-mile runs, then you're going to feel it.
Yeah. Is
that something that you've thought about, or is it something you included into your training?
No, I don't think about it. I think it comes naturally. You know, I've got a 2-year-old kid. You know, he tripped on the pavement the other day, burst out crying for like 20 minutes. Oh my God. You know, because in his mind, that's death. You know, how does he know tripping on a pavement isn't near death? But the next time he trips on a pavement, he might be like, oh, I didn't die. Oh, I'll be all right. Now, when you and I trip on the pavement, we just go, oh, damn it, that was annoying, and we carry on with our day, right? Because our bars got to a level where we know tripping on a pavement isn't going to be the end of us. I've taken it then to the next level, and most ultra endurance people take it to the next level, because now I know that if I'm feeling like this, it's not the end of my day. It's just probably because I've not eaten well, or I'm dehydrated, or I've not slept. So the resilience comes with a bit of experience, I guess, and it's just about pushing your bar higher and higher, and just being quite level-headed as well. So being resilient is good, but you need the level-headedness with it to make sure that you make the best decisions as the days go on, because everything I do is months long. So you're constantly thinking about tomorrow and the next day, and also 2 days back to work out, how am I feeling today, good or bad? Right, I'm bad today. Why am I bad today? Is that because of what's happened from the previous 2 days? But then also I'm thinking about 2 days ahead. If I'm feeling good, don't push it too hard, because then I'm going to blow up in the next couple of days. So yeah, it's just this constantly juggling all these balls and spinning the plates and ticking the boxes every day.
So your first sort of expedition was, it's a race really, wasn't it? Was the cycling, so you're 30 years old, setting off from Greenwich. Is that right?
That's right.
How do you feel on that start line?
Excited, yeah, pretty excited. I knew I had a chance of winning that race. People in the ultra world keep their training pretty secret. And this is 2012, so no one really Strava'd their stuff that much. And I played the game as well. I would do a shorter ride, like 150 mile, and put it on Strava and be like, "Oh, that's the biggest ride I've done all month." It wasn't. But if anyone else any of my competitors was following me on Strava, they might discount me as a non-competitor, right? So yeah, I felt excited. I knew I had a chance of winning. Unfortunately, on 4,000 miles in, I got run over in America. So that ended that world record attempt. But I carried on anyway to raise money for charity, and also I was trying to get this little Olympic torch that some kids at a school in Greenwich made me.
Right.
So I was taking this mini Olympic torch around the world and back to London in time for the Olympics, which kind of became my new goal. Yeah.
Wow. And how did that go in the end?
Yeah, I got back to London just in time for the Olympics. And yeah, it was hard because I didn't get the record.
Yeah.
And I'd raised money for charity, which was great, but I wanted to get the record. But I then thought, right, well, I've had my little folly around the world. Let's get back into employment. So signed on the dole, went to the job centre every 2 weeks, looked for work, and after about a year, just got nothing. So I was like, well, I better do another adventure, another challenge, because I got funding for around the world, and maybe I'll get funding again. And that's when I thought of swimming the length of Britain. So Land's End, trying to swim up the west coast, across to Ireland, back to Scotland, around the top.
Wow.
And I did that. That took 4.5 months.
Were you a strong swimmer before choosing that?
No, and I'm still not a strong swimmer now.
Right.
I could swim. I had to swim at school. And I remember I did swim a mile across a lake at school when I was about 14, 15, I guess. And but yeah, my technique's terrible. I did the cheese rolling, the cheese rolling in Gloucester, in 2009, and dislocated this shoulder and ruptured the capsule on the inside. So my left arm is just terrible. Like, I've got no power on this. Like, I'm right side dominant with my right pull, which means I always swim to the left, like massively off to the left, which is super annoying. And so I did a double Ironman this last weekend. You should see my Strava. I'm like off to the left, and then a kayaker's obviously told me to go right, mate. So off this, I think the route, I did 200 meters more than I should.
Yeah, I was going to say you'd come at the end of it, and you'd look and did 200 more than
exactly. Else. So, so I'm still not a strong swimmer. It's something I'm going to work on. I'm going to Loughborough University whenever I can, just to get some swimming lessons there. But I knew that. Like, I probably had a 5-month window. I thought it would take me 2.5 months, but I knew I had a 5-month window for the weather. So as long as I could just do 5 miles a day, roughly, I would make it before winter sets in Scotland. And I was doing about 10 miles a day of swimming in the end. So, sorry, no, I've done the maths wrong there. I knew I needed to do about 8 or 9 miles a day. That's right. to do it in the window, and I was doing about 10 miles a day. So that's why it took 4.5 months, which was fine, as long as you're just making a little bit of progress on each stroke, and you eventually going to get there. And the only thing that really would have stopped me is bad winter conditions.
What are some of the other challenges of being in the water for that length of time?
Oh, jellyfish.
Really?
Oh my God, in the face the whole time, just headbutting them. And then that's why I grew the beard, actually.
Really?
So, yeah, so the beard became like an anti-jellyfish protection device because it physically stopped the tentacles touching my skin.
Really?
And then I've just kept it ever since.
So there were stinging jellyfish that would be
all the time,
in your
every day,
face.
2 or 3 times a day. In fact, I wanted the sort of the sting to happen early on in the swim, because once you get stung once, you sort of, the second sting isn't like twice as bad. It's just like, oh well, I'm already stung, and you just get more stung. Like if you ever get stung by nettles on your leg, if you get stung again, it's not worse, it's just the same, right? So it was so annoying because sometimes my sessions were about 4.5 hours, because that was tidal, so I had about 4.5 hours of good tide to swim. And then I'd literally be like 5 minutes from finishing that session, and then I'd get stung. I'd be, what? Nearly 4.5 hours without getting stung, and then bam in the face. And then that was the worst, because then I'd get out the water being freshly stung, because it took about 4 or 5 hours for the sting to go.
Right.
So if it happened early on in the day, it'd be like brilliant. By the time I finished the session, because my face is in cold water, so it was a bit numb anyway. I'd be fine. I could go to sleep without a stinging face, but. Yeah, eventually I also put like a lanolin Vaseline mixture on my face, on my nose and cheeks, because obviously I had the cap to my eyebrows and then the beard, so it was really the nose and cheeks that were bad, and my hands, which I wouldn't feel. So I'd be swimming along, if I sort of thought there was a jellyfish ahead of me, I'd sort of push it out of the way, so it would sting my hands, but that didn't really matter. But then I'd get out and rub my eyes or something, and then it's just horrible.
How much can you see in the water?
Well, nothing.
Nothing at all. You're just completely black.
Even if the visibility's 20 meters, you still just goes to darkness.
Right. I see.
Although every now and then I'd be swimming along, and all of a sudden there'd be like this dark shadow below me. I was like, oh, and then realised the sun had just come out behind a cloud, and it was my own shadow into the depths. So, but I'm not really scared of wildlife. And seals and dolphins swam with me the whole time, and that was quite fun. That first time a dolphin shoots underneath you, you sort of it's quite terrifying, because I have a wild imagination, but they're not. After a while they get quite inquisitive, and the seals are the most inquisitive. They're sort of me to you, swimming with me,
Really?
That was great.
Wow. Oh yeah, it's some boost that if you need some support along the way. That's
exactly.
Incredible. And how did it feel to finish that?
That was a relief. That was, because there's something about being cold that just ruins you. So cold and sleep deprivation, those two things, no matter how fit you are, they'll ruin anyone really, and it just saps your energy and your motivation. So I remember getting to John O'Groats going, oh, I'm glad, I just don't have to get in the cold water again, because I'm tired now.
Wow. And then after having finished that, were you straight on to the next one, or did you go looking for work again? What was your mindset?
That one changed my life.
Right.
Finishing that swim changed my life. The next day I had TV deals and proposals and book deals and things like that. Ben Fogle was really helpful. Like he was so helpful. He messaged me and said, mate, that was an amazing swim. I'd like to invite you to this dinner in London, which I went to. And then afterwards I remember him saying, right, well, obviously you're going to write a book. I'll sort you out with a book agent, and I'll help you get a book deal. And I remember the whole time thinking, right, Ben, what do you want out of this? I'm like, the cynic in me was like, he wants something, doesn't he? And and also it was in a group of people, and I thought he was just showing off, like, yeah, I'll help you out, Sean, I'm the nice guy, blah blah blah. And I remember going to bed. It was so funny, so it was this big fancy dinner in Mayfair, everyone's all dressed up and everything, and he's like, oh, at the end, don't worry, just we'll sort you a taxi to whatever hotel you're going to. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Jumped in the taxi, and like, where are you going, mate? I'm like, yeah, Muswell Hill. I'm just sleeping in my car, actually. So after this fancy dinner, went back, sat in my car, and then in the morning I was like, I'm never going to hear from Ben ever again. But yeah, literally by 10 a.m. he'd already emailed me and copied me into a book agent, and I got a book deal pretty quick because of him, and someone else to help manage some commercial things, and he never wanted anything from it.
Wow.
One thing, he just wanted to do a nice thing for me, and he really helped me. So yeah, Ben Fogel, big shout out. You know.
That's fantastic. I suppose to go from looking for work and being on job seekers to having book deals for
TV deals. Yeah,
how does that change your mindset in terms of the next challenge?
Well, it's weird because it's like I'm still living with my mum. You know, I've got Discovery Channel, you know, saying, well, what do you want to do next? We'll follow it. And all, you know, book deals with Penguin Random House. Just signed a 2-book deal with them. And yeah, I'm still in the spare bedroom at my mum's house. I had bought a boat at this point. I just hadn't kind of renovated it enough to move on to it. I eventually did live on the boat for a while. So yeah, it was weird. Yeah, I'm in two minds whether I played it well or didn't play it well. That life where I was in that bubble of Discovery Channel and, you know, or front cover of magazines and all that sort of thing. Because a little part of me, like the ego part of me, was like, oh, look at me now, I'm so blah blah blah, and then the other part of me hated all the attention and was like, just leave me alone, I want to do my own thing. I don't know. It's hard to know whether I coped with it in my head.
Yeah, I think if you make it through it, then that's almost enough sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. I think I let it get to me probably more than I should have, maybe I placed more importance on all the fluff that came around the challenges than the challenges themselves. Whereas now, I really care nothing for the fluff around it. I just want to chase the challenges, and you know, I really don't care whether it gets media attention or blah blah blah. I just want to do the challenge and know that I've done it, and I feel satisfied, and the terrier's been fed, and then I can sort of chill out for a bit and then go back to my veggie gardens and writing books and things, and then no doubt something else will come up and I'll chase that again.
Yeah, so scratch the itch for a little while.
Scratch the itch for a while, exactly.
It builds up again.
Exactly.
So what was the next step after that?
So once I'd swum Britain, then I ran the length of Britain to finish the triathlon. So cycle, swim, then run.
Of course, yeah.
Then I did the world's longest triathlon, which was a lap of Britain again, and that was the second documentary on Discovery Channel.
Yeah.
Called Sean Conway on the Edge, which is pretty good.
I think, is that the one where you said it was one of the most challenging of all of your challenges?
At the time, yeah. At the time, definitely. You know, and in fact, they all get challenging. Well, running the length of Britain was not as hard as the swim, but the triathlon around Britain was. It probably wasn't as hard as the swim, truthfully, because I wasn't cold the whole time, but it was still blooming hard.
Just in case anybody doesn't know, can you just explain a bit about what a triathlon entails?
So a triathlon is you swim first, cycle, and then run, and it's a shorter swim, a long cycle distance-wise, and a shortish run at the end. They start off with a sprint, and then you double the distance to get an Olympic, and you double the distance again to get a half iron, and then a full iron, and then you can go further. I did a double distance. So the double for me this weekend was a 5-mile swim, 230-mile bike ride, and then a 50-mile run at the end. Wow. All in one go.
And how long did that take?
It took me 40 hours because I was a bit slow.
40 hours.
Yeah, I had a 10-minute nap in the middle there, so that fixed the sleepiness.
That sounds quite quick to me.
No, the winner did it in 29.
Wow.
I did it with my cousin. He was a little slower than me, and I waited for him a few times. But I'm still fatigued from the 105 full irons, you know. So I could have maybe done 35, which would have been okay. That would have given me 5th or 6th place, I think. But no, I'm still recovering, really.
How long does recovery take from such, like, obviously you're pushing your body almost past its limits?
Well, no one really knows. People sort of say maybe 6 months, and I can probably, it is probably around there. Like muscularly, it comes back quickly, but then you've got like your hormones and your neurological system and all your nerves and stuff like that. There's obviously a little bit of imbalances when you're doing one thing repetitive over and over. Some muscles get weaker, and then now I've got a right hip issue and my glutes are a bit weak, so I need to really work on those to get a bit better. I'm overusing my quads, both on the bike and the run, which is just making me slower. Basically, I need to engage my glutes a bit more. So there's lots of those little things, which I think will probably take about 6 months.
Neurologically, what are the effects?
Well, your nerves will get tight. Like your nerves are like a tendon type thing, so they get tight and overworked and inflamed, and they'll take ages to calm down.
What does that feel like?
It can feel like just tight muscles.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it can feel like that, but it'll be nerve. It can feel like you've strained a muscle, like your hamstring, for example. Like I have the nerve that runs from my spine all the way down to the back of my leg. You know, sometimes I have a really tight hamstring, but actually it's just my neck that's tight. So if I do some nerve flossing, which is bending your neck, lifting your leg up and pointing your toes towards you, and you bounce it like that with your hands behind your back, you do it on the edge of a table, you know, stretching out your spine, you know, that fixed my hamstring, for example.
Wow.
Or I have a front hip issue down the front of my quad. That's actually my lower back, because I was pulling too strong on the right pull on the swim. I had a really tight lower back, and then that actually extends through down to your knee eventually. So, and all this comes with this just experience and chatting to my physio. So yeah, it's all about managing all those little things now until the spring, I guess.
How much does sleep play a part in your recovery?
Huge. Or I don't want to say it's number one, because it's all number one priority. There's 10 pillars of endurance. So if you want to be an ultra endurance athlete, you've got to nail all of these. You've got to nail planning, you've got to nail experience, fitness, health, nutrition, hydration, sleep, muscle management, motivation, and community. And then there's an 11th one, which I think I'll add, which is discipline. You know, that's an important one, but that sort of comes in with fitness and experience as well. But I might add it as the 11th. Yeah, sleep is huge, you know. And unfortunately, a lot of these events, sleep is the one thing that could make you lose a race, because it's continuous. So, you know, when I did my double this weekend, I had a 10-minute nap, and that fixed the sleepiness, and that was fine. And I could afford that because I was probably taking 5 minutes per feed stop anyway. So all I would have needed to shave is a couple of, 10 or 20 seconds from each feed stop, and I would have brought back that time. So, but some people won't sleep at all, you know. And if you're really close, it's never that close on a double. Like, but first and second place was 3 hours, I think, on that double. And on the triple, it was 5 hours between first and second place. So you're sort of hustling time, but you've got to just be a little bit more strategic with, you know, if you cut your feed stop short by 3 minutes, and in those 3 minutes that you've not eaten as much, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to be 10 minutes slower on the next.
You're not saving 3 minutes because
exactly. Whereas, you know, yes, if you've done all your eating and all your hydration, and maybe you need a stretch or whatever, then you go, and that's your time. You eat as quickly as you can. You do everything as quickly as you can. Don't cut that time down, because it's important that you do these things. But then, can you do some of those things on the bike or on the run? You know, if you've got crew, some of them, you'll be surprised how much time you lose. So when I came into my feed stop, I was running with a guy, did a whole lap. It takes 70 minutes to do the run lap. And when he got to the feed station again, there was 8 laps. I just decided to stop and eat, and I was there 5 minutes, and he was like, his crew were there walking with him. So we ran in together, actual running. Then he just walked for a bit while his crew gave him food. I stopped for about 5 minutes. I never saw him again. Yeah. You know, because in those 5 minutes he walked, he probably could have walked 500 meters maybe in 5 minutes. Probably a little bit more if you had a fast walk on it. 9 minutes.
Half a mile,
So because you can walk 9 minutes a kilometre pretty much. And then if we're both running the same speed roughly, there's no way I'm catching. You know. So, and you do that 8 times, all of a sudden, you know, he's 40 minutes ahead of me, really. So, it's all about balancing all those things. But sleep is huge. Like on my 105 full irons, as soon as I was getting 8 hours sleep, so I needed to get to a speed where I could do a 14-hour iron distance triathlon in zone 1 heart rate. As soon as I could do that, I was getting my 8 hours sleep and I wasn't pushing it in the red. If I was doing 14 hours in zone 3, then I would have needed too much recovery.
Just for people at home, what would be the difference between zone 1 and 3?
So zone 1 for me was 110. Zone 3 is you sort of hitting the 140, sort of up around there for me.
Yeah.
110 beats per minute all day is way more sustainable than 100, even more sustainable than 120, 130, 140. Yes. If you did just a 1-day event, you know, most sort of amateur Ironman competitors will probably try and keep their heart rate at around 140 for a single day event. So if you're doing 105 of them in a row, you need to be as low as possible. Keeping a good speed. Like, if I wasn't fit enough, I could have if 110 beats per minute gave me an 18-hour Ironman time, I'm not fit enough.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to get fast enough so that when you bring it down to about 14 hours, which is the sweet spot between speed and recovery, you know, if you can keep that at a low heart rate, then happy days. It's sustainable, and then you just hope for not getting injured or COVID or falling off the bike and all the other things.
How important is it to actually monitor your heart rate as you go? Is it something you're aware of while you're running?
Yeah, all the time. Like, yeah, it got to a point where I sort of knew what my heart rate was anyway. You know, and any athlete out there, I urge them to try and guess their heart rate rather than relying on their watch.
Test,
yeah, and do it all the time. So run along and go, right, actively go, right, what do I think my heart rate is? I think it's 130. Look at your watch. 150. God, I was way off.
Yeah, I see.
And you'll soon realize, and then you get to a point where you can start feeling it. But often your body will just tell you that you're pushing it too hard, so you know to bring it back, and that comes with experience. So after a while, yes, I'm monitoring it probably every 10 minutes, but really I sort of know whether I'm going over or under, you know. So I definitely could feel the difference between 110 and 115 when I was on the bike or on the run. Like, I just knew it. Like, that extra 5 felt way harder.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because I was just quite in tune with everything, and I knew that on the days where I was 115 or 120, I paid for it the next day. So yeah, and that just came with understanding and experience and knowing my body, you know, to the nth degree. And because I micromanage and microanalyze everything, literally everything. Like, if I feel the smallest thing in my shoe, in my shoulder, in my fingernail, I'm like, why is that there? What's that? And I'm going back into the catalogue of injuries in the last 12 years, going, right, okay, that was that one. I can do this in my hip and that'll fix the knee. Okay, cool, right, we'll fix that. And if it's a new one, then I'm like, Google, phone my physio, what's going on? Do I tape it? You know. So it's just micromanaging everything, because it's the smallest thing which could ruin you, you know.
Yeah, I imagine fine margins when you're trying to push yourself for that amount.
Well, exactly. So for example, let's say I got a massive blister on the sole of my foot. That could potentially mean then the next day I'd be half an hour slower, which meant I'd get half an hour less sleep. And because of the half an hour less sleep, I might be another half an hour slower.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden it's a downward spiral and you never get back on it. Or because you didn't tape your foot when you felt that tiny bit of blister coming on. So yeah,
there you go. If I could take you back a little bit when you were describing the 10 or 11 pillars of endurance.
Yeah.
One of the one that's most surprising to me and something that's really important to us at Sports for Champions was community.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, huge. So it's one I didn't give enough credit to up until the full iron, the 105 iron, 105, because you'd be surprised how much better you will get if you surround yourself by, because I'm talking sport and I'm talking physical performance here, right? There's obviously a whole element of social and well-being and mental health and all that by being part of a club and a community. That's sort of obvious, I think, or it should be obvious. So if you're part of a running club, you'll just have a better experience. But even just from a pure physical point of view, like physical performance, I think you will get quicker and get better and get fitter and get faster and get more resilient if you do what you do with other like-minded people. 100%. You'll bounce off each other, you'll push each other, you'll enter races together, and you will just perform. You will 100% perform better. I think Eliud Kipchoge has just said something similar, where the only reason he's one of the the fastest runner in the world is because he runs with the other fastest runners in the world. If he did it on his own, he said he would never be this good. And that's, I 100% believe that. And then, of course, as I said, there's a whole other community, the other sort of social impact and mental health and just enjoyment and happiness and inspiration. You get inspired, other people inspire, you inspire other people. So yeah, it's a massive important one, which is one I really, as I said, sort of discredited, because I always thought I could do anything on my own. I'm an island, because everything I've done has mostly been solo and unsupported. But no, I now put a lot of effort into the community thing.
It's really refreshing to hear, because you would look at all ultra endurance athletes and kind of think they would almost have to be an island. You've got to go into the hurt locker and find within you the sort of perseverance to push past your own barriers. But yeah, it's really nice to hear actually that community is such a big part of it.
Yeah, it is. And for me, community isn't while I'm training. I still train alone. I go for a couple of rides and a couple of runs with friends every now and again, but I'd say 80% of the training I do are still alone. But there's the extended community around everything. Everyone's so when I did my double iron, one of the guys who joined me for Iron 105, he came and ran up Snowdon with me because that was part of the course. There was another guy who came with me who supported Nicola, who also came and ran with me. She did the 100-mile race so there's a whole bunch of different distances this weekend. So yeah, we've all become, Ian, Scottish Ian, who supported Nicola on this weekend at the Brutal. He said the Iron 105, it's become a big hug for everyone. Just the arms of the Iron 105 has gathered everyone in, and we've created this little community, and it's something I never expected, and it's just been amazing. And then everyone else who's done little challenges, we've all been out there to help them. So the people who are helping me have all gone out to help other people, like teacher Simon, who he decided to do 24 hours on my Iron 105 bike course. Wow. And then loads of us came, and he didn't cycle alone once.
That's brilliant.
He just was like, hey guys, I've decided to do 24 hours on the Iron 105 course. Here's my tracker, it'd be great to see you. And he didn't cycle alone once. Everyone came and joined him. I did a stint from 1 a.m. until 8 a.m. Which I loved. So yeah, it's community is huge. It's super important.
That's fantastic. So we've strayed a little bit as we're kind of trying to methodically work our way through your multitude of world records. I think are we at the point of you cycling? Are we on to that?
So my Europe record. Yeah, so I did my world's longest triathlon around Britain.
Yeah.
So that was, I started with the bike, so 3,500 on the bike, 800 and something on the run, 120 on the swim. Got that third. That was the second record. So,
yeah.
So I had a world's first, world's furthest. Then the fastest was the Across Europe record, which I attempted in 2017 and got injured on that one.
Right.
So I had to bail, and then it was too late to recover and do it in the season. But went back to the drawing board, and then 2018 had another crack at that, and then got that record. So there's 2 Europe records, a north-south and an east-west, and you can go either way on each of them. I wanted to go for the east-west one, so started on the edge of Portugal, Cabo da Roca, and finishes in the Ural Mountains in Russia, a town called Ufa, because that's west of that is Asia. So that bit of Russia is Asian Russia, and then this bit of Russia is European Russia. So yeah, half that route is Ukraine and Russia. So I'll be holding on to that record for a while, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah. Wow.
Which is a shame, because I sort of have no business in keeping records forever. I want someone to have another crack at that. So yeah, did that 24 days and some change to do the 4,000 miles. So,
how was that?
Again, the sleep deprivation kills you on those things. It's 170, 180 miles a day. Sleeping as little as possible, public roads. So it was a bit of a, yes, if roads were better, I probably could have got away with less sleep.
Yeah.
But I needed to get at least 5 hours, 5 hours really.
Is that because you've got to just be so aware of your surroundings?
Pretty
on
much.
A public road, you never know, do you?
Exactly, and it's, every time you got to have, I had mirrors on the bike, cars coming up on me. Unfortunately, the statistics for drunk driving in Eastern Europe is pretty horrendous.
Of course,
If you just look at the numbers, it's just terrifying. So yeah, you got to be aware of that. And then there's certain times in those countries that I just didn't want to ride. I didn't want to ride after 11 o'clock at night because I knew that would be where the most potential dangerous drivers would be on the road.
Yeah.
So I made a rule, like I'd sleep from about 10 until 3, because I figured by 3 in the morning everyone's passed out. So it'd be quieter road. So I sort of did that, or 11 till 4. I'll try and sleep in Eastern Europe. And it was enough, like my pace was good enough to do the mileage outside of that, but I had massive headwinds in Russia, so I had 1,000 miles of headwinds, which ruined me.
Wow.
And I don't know how I did it, literally 1,000 miles, bang on the nose, 15 mile an hour. I went for a ride the other week and I had a headwind for like an hour and I swore I'd never ride again. I don't know how I did 1,000 miles, 7 days pretty much, I think 5 days, no 5 days. No, what was that? No, it was about 7 days.
So when you are facing such a long time into a headwind, it's unlikely to change. Presumably at that point your muscles are past the point of burning. It's just you.
You've got to still be careful on your power.
Yeah.
You can't. What you don't want to do is push too hard, because the next day you're still going to have headwinds, but then you've gone in the red.
True.
So unfortunately, what happens is you just land up taking a hit on the time. And luckily, by the time I got to Russia, I built up a 24-hour lead on the record. And so in those 7 days, I could afford to lose sort of 3 hours a day.
Yeah, the odd hour here and there, yeah.
Which meant it's not like I was out 3 hours less. I was just 3 hours slower a day, which is huge. That's going from 180 miles a day down to 140 something, and that's what happened. So basically the last week in Russia I just was doing way less mileage for the same amount of time out because of the headwind, but I could afford to. I don't know what I would have done had I not had that 24-hour lead coming into Russia, because I was really digging deep, to be fair. I was pushing it as hard as I could that was sustainable day after day. Yeah, maybe I could have, I did sleep on the last night. I could have pushed through if I
absolutely had to, yeah.
If I had to. So I had 6 hours sleep on that last night and still came in 8 hours ahead of the record. But let's say I was behind the record. I know the previous record holder, he also slept, because again, just dangerous roads. And I think he slept for 6 hours looking at his data. So, I could have gone through the night on that last night if I was behind. But yeah, luckily I wasn't. And again, it's sort of just capitalizing on the good days without, again, because on the good days when you've got tailwind and the weather's good and there's food everywhere, you can sometimes go, well, I've done my 200 miles today and I did it 2 hours quicker. Well, I'll just have more sleep. No.
Yeah, I see.
You go by time, and some days you're good, some days you're not. But you just got to keep the constant time out on the road, really.
Presumably by this point you're proficient with the tyre change.
Pretty good, yeah. It's way under 10 minutes, about 5 minutes, I reckon. 4 minutes,
great.
Maybe even 4 minutes.
Yeah.
It depends. Sometimes, if it's really hot, or your hands are a bit tired, your thumbs. I broke both my thumbs 10 years ago, so getting the tyre on with this left hand is a bit sore, and a new tyre sometimes is a bit smaller. But no, pretty quick.
Obviously the physical side of things will have improved because obviously you've got all of that under your belt, your previous work, but how did this cycle change from perhaps your first attempt at sort of professional cycling racing?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. I spent less time off the bike. That's a big thing. When you get into the ultra endurance cycling, it's the time off the bike that ruins you more than your speed. So I just got more efficient in all those 10 pillars, sleeping, the right amount. Too little sleep and you're not recovered too much sleep, you're behind the record. So, working out how much sleep I actually need for the effort I had that day. how much food I need, what type of food I need, minimizing my stops, getting better at dealing with potential mechanicals, nipping them in the bud early potentially, swapping tires around when at halfway point so that you don't have to buy a new tire because most tires now will last about 4,000 miles, and it was a 4,000 mile route actually, so I did take a spare tire just in case and spare spokes. So yeah, it's all those little things which, marginal gains I think they call it. Eventually you get to a point where you're a day quicker than you would have been 10 years ago, which is huge.
That's really interesting. Do you struggle to keep yourself entertained while doing things like this?
No, I'm pretty good at switching my brain off. I think that's probably another superpower I have.
So it is a total switch off. You're just not even.
Other than I'm constantly micro managing and analysing everything that's happening, and food and water and where I'm going to stop, where I'm going to sleep. Like that keeps my brain pretty busy. But for the Iron 105, yeah, it was a case of just turn the brain off. I knew the route by heart, so I didn't really have to think about potholes and corners and what was coming. I had my system and I had an awesome crew, so it was when you drive on the motorway, like when you get to the end, someone's like, "What did you think about?" Well, I don't know, I was just following the road.
Yeah, you almost teleport.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what it's like for me. I'm pretty good at that.
That's interesting. So you complete the Europe east to west, and you come back to the UK. Where do you even go from that?
Well, that was hard because that was the third of the 3 records that so for ages I only thought there were 3 types of records: first, furthest, and fastest. And then I sort of I just became like just a normal guy again. I did a couple of little things, like I ran across Iceland, I did a marathon in every national park in the UK, I started this thing called the 496 challenge, which is where you run 1 kilometre on the first of the month, 2 kilometres on the second, 3 on the third, so you run the date all the way through to 31k at the end on a month of 31 days. Most people do it in January, and that's taken off like globally now, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So I've done lots of little things. I got married, had a couple of kids. COVID, of course, was 2 years of that. So it was only until end of 2021 where I got hungry again. The terrier got hungry, needed to chase something, and that's when I discovered there was a 4th category of world records, which was the most consecutive of something, or just the most of something. It doesn't always have to be consecutive. The most full iron distance record just seemed like a natural progression for me, and it excited me.
Is that something that's spoken about, or is it not really in the zeitgeist for iron runners to even consider taking that on?
Well, it's weird. So there's only one other guy who's done these sort of long multi-day ones, James Lawrence in America. He had the record of 50, then he broke his own record and did 101. So I was just trying to break his record, basically. He also thought he was going to take the record to the grave. So that excited me. I was like, right, well, here we go. Because I knew I could do it. I genuinely knew I could do it. And I did attempt it in 2022. Came off the bike and got injured. Pulled the tendon between the top of my shin and the top of my foot. And then, just my pace was too slow, so I missed the cutoffs. So went back to the drawing board, strengthened that tendon, did a lot more training, and then started again on the 10th of April this year.
Wait, sorry, when you have an injury like that, is there a temptation to give up? Like a lot of people, if they say, for example, if they built up to something and it goes so dramatically wrong to the point where you have to stop, and do you look at it? Do I continue to try this?
Well, I did try. I got injured on day 5,
right?
And I thought, right, well, let me see what pace I can keep with the injury. And then day 6 I was slow. Day 7 I was even slower. And then day 7 I'd missed the cutoff anyway. So there's 2 cutoffs for the full iron record. There's the 17-hour cutoff, which is sort of unofficial, and then but the real record is you've got to do it within 24 hours. So you've got midnight to midnight to do each day, to do each full distance. And on day 7 I got in at 11:53 or something, and I just there's no way, like my pace was way too down. And then my recovery wasn't quick, I didn't have enough sleep, so I was slower than I was never gonna
cut your losses kind of thing.
And I'd really gone way over the 17-hour cutoff, which is what you sort of really need to do because the other guy did it. So I was sort of forced out the record because of my pace. But yeah, the injury just, there's no point really in carrying on. Which sucked, sucked. It's like no other way to put it really. Just it's getting injured is the worst thing in the world for your, you've put so much energy into something. But I'm pretty good at bouncing back. I sort of had a couple of days of being grumpy and sat on the sofa, and I was like, wow, well, the good thing now is I have another 9 months of training. I love training. Honestly, I love it. So I was like, brilliant. Well, I've got another 9 months of training now to the new start date over the winter, and I can just nail it now. So I get quite motivated at being rubbish at something. And obviously I got injured, and my pace was a bit down. I think even without the injury I could have been a bit faster. The speed would have come, like on day 7 my bike was quick, my swim was quick, my run was very slow. That's the thing that ruined me. And but yeah, I bounced back quickly.
I realised we didn't do it. Can you just give us an overview of exactly what that record entails? So
Iron 105 is the most number of full iron distance triathlons in a row. So it's a 2.4 mile swim in the morning, straight into a 112 mile bike, and then a marathon at the end. And you got to do that every single day. And I did it for 105 days straight.
Wow. From
the 10th of April to the 23rd of July. So yeah, 3.5 months of doing basically the same distance as an Ironman every single day. Yeah.
What are some of the unique challenges around maintaining that level of exertion?
Just everything, 8,000 calories a day, you got to keep on top of that so you don't waste away and lose all your power. Because if I lost like a stone, which I could have easily lost, half of that would have been muscle, which then maybe my speed would have gone, which meant I wouldn't have made the cut. My pace overall time would have been slower, less recovery, getting the good sleep, getting physio when you need it. I was choosing sleep over physio, so I'd analyze every day whether I thought I needed physio that day, and then so eventually I had physio once a week. There's no averaging. My Europe record, I could have a bad day, and then as long as the next day was better. Whereas on this one, it's actual. You got to do an actual full iron every day. You can't be short, like do a half today and then do a little bit more the next day, and eventually you're averaging 105 over 105 days.
The cut-off point is every 24 hours. Basically.
Yeah, you've got to do the distance every day. So if you did marathon, there's 2 types of marathon records. You can do an actual marathon a day for X amount of days, or you can average a marathon a day, which means you can have some shorter days, some longer days.
Makes sense.
And if the weather's crap, you do a short day and then hope on the good days you do more. There's none of that on this one. It's actual. The bad weather days, you still got to do the same thing.
How does the climate affect you?
Not too bad actually. Yeah, I'm pretty good in the heat. I like the heat. And May and June was quite hot. The wind is the worst, because the wind you lose an hour on the bike on a windy day, yearly pretty much. So yeah, April was horrible, and then July was pretty miserable as well. The end of most of July was windy and rainy and a bit crap. But I'm okay because every time it's bad, I'm like, if it's hot, I'm like, well, this is not nearly as hot as that time I cycled across the Atacama Desert. And when it's windy, it's like, well, this is not nearly as windy as that time I got chased by tornadoes in Oklahoma. And then if it's rainy, I'm like, this is not nearly as rainy as it was in India. So I guess I've got always something to compare it to that's been inevitably worse.
That's a great mindset just for life in general, isn't it?
Yeah, but you only get that by pushing yourself and putting yourself in miserable places, and then your bar gets pushed up, right?
Of course, yeah. So as you're approaching the record, as you're approaching the end of your efforts, what kind of thoughts are going through your head? Are you scared about an injury happening, or are you just focused?
I mean, mainly scared about falling off the bike.
Yeah,
like that was the biggest risk of injury. Once I hit the 90s, I knew like I was unlikely to get ill now. I did a pretty good protocol with not getting any too close to people, no handshakes, luckily COVID brought back the fist pump, so no one was too put out by that. It's just falling off the bike, and there was a couple of scares around day 60, 70 where some people crashed in front of me on the bike, because people come and join me on the bike every day. And that was nerve-wracking. So yeah, I was being super cautious, really, which is weird because, you know, I should have been just as cautious on day 30 as day 99, because day 30, crashing on day 30 was equally as bad as crashing on day 99, but in your head, of course, you come a lot further, I guess.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Because it's almost touching distance.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
You're starting to really.
Yeah.
And then what was the feeling like on the final day?
Well, 102 was the final day. It was weird. I always knew I could get the record, so it was sort of like, I told you so, world, internet, for everyone who said I couldn't. And then also I didn't want to quit, so I carried on. So that's why I landed up doing the 105. I would have carried on even further, but I couldn't do that to my wife. She was, you know, got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Caroline's self-employed, and you know, it's hard to solo parent. Like, it's really hard. So I sort of said to her, right, I want to carry on, but I'll just flip a coin. And then I flipped coins, and then eventually the coin said stop, and then that was fine because I didn't stop. It was not me quitting,
It's fate.
so I'm cool with that. It was just the coin telling me to quit, and I'm happy with that, you know. And it happened to be a Sunday, so I had the 105 day, which was Sunday, was an amazing day. Lots of the regular riders came out and joined me, and pressure was off, and we had some fun on the road, and same on the run. So I was happy, but I was sort of sad it was ending, because I've sort of said this: imagine having a job that no one else in the world has. No one else. You're the only person on the whole planet who has a specific job, and it's very hard, but the community is around it. Your work colleagues, the people who came and joined me, are amazing. You've created all these amazing sort of connections. And even though it's hard, you know, do you want to give it up? Would you give it up? You know, that's how I thought about it. Because as soon as I knew as soon as I stopped, all that other stuff would sort of slowly would go away, really. And it hasn't, because the community's still there, and we still keep in touch, and I'm still doing other races. But yeah, it was a very unique experience that, you know, no one else in the world has had, really. And that was hard to sort of give up, I guess.
It must be hard coming back to normality from those challenges.
Yeah, sort of. I'm quite good at it now, because I just focus on the next thing, and the next thing doesn't have to be a big thing. Like the double brutal this weekend. I've got a 110k run in the Lake District in 2 weeks. I've got a potential 200-mile run in a tunnel, back and forth in a tunnel.
Wow.
It's called the tunnel. So it's 60 hours in a 1-mile tunnel, back and forth in the dark.
In dark, yeah, I was going to say in darkness, because even that amount of time in darkness.
Not allowed headphones either, which is awesome. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I've got a 215-mile run across Scotland next year. I've got a couple other records I want to break, so still hard ones, but slightly shorter, less time away from the family, sort of 2-3 weeks long. So that, sort of, I'm pretty good at just, you know, having stuff to think about. The terrier's still sleeping now, he's pretty happy, he's full. But there's stuff, when he wakes up, we'll go chase something.
In terms of legacy, what kind of thing would you like to leave?
Oh, no, I have no interest. No, I don't care. No. In fact, the only thing I quite like the idea of is you keep the copyright to your written word, I think 70 years after you die.
Right.
So if I die in 50 years time, it'll be 120 years time from now that my great grandkids will still get a little bit of pocket money from my books that I've written. So I've written 6 books, and I'll write my 7th now with the I'm 105. So I love that. Literally in, you know, 120 years time, you know, great grandkids are going to be getting like £5 for a beer every month from my book sales. So that's the only legacy I really care about. I don't want a statue or any stuff to be like, because all my records are going to get broken. And in fact, when I'm moaning at my kids, being going like, I once did 105 for Lions, they'll be, shut up, Dad, the record's 500 now anyway. So no, I sort of don't really care about legacy at all. It'd be nice if my kids got into sport. I think that would be, if that was a legacy, a personal legacy for me, is that my kids got into sport, maybe not competitively or any of that, but just enjoyed sport and carried on doing sport after school. I think that would be amazing. And if their kids did the same, you know, whether it's just hiking or mountaineering or swim, cycle, run, whatever it is, canoeing, you know, it'd be great if they sort of looked at me and realised the benefits of sport, because we all know it's super important. But knowing my luck, they'll be gamers or something and never leave their bedroom.
I think there's probably a balance somewhere in there.
I guess so, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about funding? I know that it's something that almost propelled you into it in the first place. Is it something that, with the book deals, with the increasing profile, that's become less of a challenge for you?
Yeah, certainly. Like in all sport, you know, 80% of the sponsorship goes to 20% of the athletes, and that's in work, like, just everything. That's just life. That's just the way life is. When I was a photographer, 80% of the good jobs went to 20% of the photographers.
Of course.
You know, so yeah, all sport relies on sponsorship from grassroots level. You know, whether it's your parents sponsoring you or you got little clubs. We sponsor our 40 quid a year for a player at our local football club, and that just pays for his bus transfers and fuel money, I guess. But yeah, all sport relies on sponsorship, and yes, it's a little bit easier now. People at least answer my emails when I say, well, I've got this other idea that I need some money for, because I've done all the other ones. I go, well, he's probably going to do this one too. But yeah, it's super important that companies and organizations are willing to put money in their pockets and, you know, help people out and give some money to people. And it often doesn't need to be a lot, because, for example, you know, recently, if you were a youth swimmer in North Wales, all your galas were in Cardiff, because there's no 50-metre pool up here.
Of course.
You know, so all of a sudden a parent, you know, to go to watch their kid do 100 metres, you know, freestyle, one race, which takes a minute, they're driving to Cardiff, they're staying at least one night in a hotel, and all the expenses are there, and then driving back. It's hundreds of pounds just for that. Whereas because North Wales doesn't have a 50-metre pool, we're campaigning for it. Me and a few mates trying to get them to get one, and they're thinking about it. Sport Wales, but they don't know the location, whether it should be Wrexham or Llandudno. Because Llandudno, of course, gives more access to the west, whereas Wrexham has a bigger catchment area, so it's more likely to be used. So it's a difficult. I understand their issues there, but you know, just, you know, getting funding to some people which will allow them to travel to events and, you know, get a bit of physio when they need to is yeah, really, really important, because without that, sport dies.
That's
pretty
it.
Much.
That's exactly kind of where Sports for Champions pitches itself. Obviously, the stars propel sports into the public sphere, but it's getting those people to that level that where Sports for Champions tries to help.
No, it's a super important thing that you guys are doing, and I'm super excited to be involved with it. You know.
Fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit, just as we round things off, how do you apply some of the lessons that learned through your sport to normal life?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a big one, and that's even now, 15 years on or whatever, it's hard to really apply it, because you can forget it, is a bad day today doesn't mean tomorrow's going to be a bad day. And a good day today doesn't mean tomorrow's going to be a good day either. You know, those two things, you know, that's when the level-headedness comes in, and that's what sports really kind of taught me, is just keeping this level-headedness, not taking your foot off the gas in life when things are going well, and then not being too hard on yourself when things are going bad, because sometimes out of your control, and then tomorrow might be better, and there'll be reasons that just different. You know, for me, it's the wind might change, or the weather might change, or I might have more access to food and water and be more hydrated and have more nutrition. So that's sort of an important one. Other than the obvious one, which is, and everyone talks about it, is we can do more than we think we can do, and it's only pushing yourself. But certainly don't give up when things are bad, because if it's bad today, it doesn't mean it's bad tomorrow.
I think that's great. And in terms of practical advice, I'm not sure whether you would advise somebody to get into endurance racing, but have you got anything practical that perhaps you'd like to share with the viewing public? You know,
what I say is, if you want to do something that is sport related, first just go and do it. Like, just do it. Don't overthink it. Don't go and spend 140 quid on a pair of trainers because that's what you think you need for running. Just go out and do it because you enjoy it. Don't take your watch, don't take a heart rate monitor, don't Strava it. Just go and run. Forget about your pace, forget about distance, and just enjoy it. Do that for a while, and then once you start getting a bit better, then you can start adding in all the extra stuff. I think, and I'm to blame for this as well, I've suffered from it a bit, we all expect results quicker than they're meant to come. You want to get from couch to 5k, or if you want to run a marathon, for example, you could probably do a marathon uninjured with a couple of weeks or a month of training, but you're taking a risk. Like, you're taking a risk on injury, you're taking a risk on losing the passion for it because you go into it a bit unprepared. Yes, you could do it and you could have this hero story like, I did a marathon with 2 weeks of training, but I think you're doing your body a disservice, really. I think, why not take 6 months to train for it and do it properly and nail it. I think you'll have an overall much better experience if you play the long game than you do trying to get the results like super quick, which is hard because you look on the internet and everyone's got a story where they, as I said, did a marathon with no training, and I'm like, oh, yes, okay. You also could be an outlier. You may just be lucky with your technique and you got lucky on the day, but it's not a good story. Like, don't follow those people.
There you go. Hard yards.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I think that's a brilliant note to end it on. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, anytime, and I'm super excited to be involved with you guys.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone watching at home. I hope you enjoyed that one, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.